Father abandoned his daughter. 3 years later, he shows up telling her something that has her cry. As Jane, a young McDonald's employee, handed a bag of fast food to the customer at the counter, she noticed a familiar face. It was her estranged father, whom she hadn't seen in years. With trembling hands, she asked if he wanted ketchup or mustard, not expecting what he would say next. Her father's words caused tears to well up in Jane's eyes as she struggled to hold back her emotions. She stared at the man in front of her, and despite him being practically a stranger to her, she couldn't help but recognize parts of herself in his face. She hadn't seen her father in years, but she knew from pictures that she looked a lot like him. They had the same eyes. For a moment, she froze, unable to move or say anything. Slowly, Jane's eyes filled with tears, and she could already feel that she was about to burst out crying soon. However, she did not want this man, her father, to see her like this. He was not a part of her life, and she didn't want him to be, especially after what he just said. But before we start, smash the like button, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss out on our upcoming stories. Without even thinking, she threw the sauce packets at him and ran away into the bathroom. One of her colleagues, Marcia, shot the customer a dirty look, not knowing that it was Jane's father, and quickly followed her into the bathroom. She knew that customers often got away with saying mean and incredibly rude things, but she had never seen Jane react like this. She usually had a comeback waiting for anyone who tried to mess with her. When she arrived in the bathroom, Jane had locked herself into one of the stalls. "Jane, are you all right? What did that man say to you?" Marcia asked as she knocked on the door, but she refused to come out. "All right then, take your time," she told Jane, and under her breath, she added, "I'll go and take care of that idiot." Marcia still had no idea that that customer was Jane's father, which was why she did not hesitate to yell at him as soon as she saw him. "Who do you think you are? What the hell are you still doing here? Leave now. And if I ever see you here again." She did not even finish that last sentence, but she didn't have to. The message was clear. Everyone was standing frozen in complete silence, not daring to utter a word or even move. Marcia still had not looked away from the customer she had just yelled at, and she refused to break eye contact first. "Well, didn't you hear what I just said? Go," she added to finish her rant as she pointed towards the exit. A teary-eyed Jane appeared asking, What did you say to him?" Marcia proudly explained, feeling good about standing up for her. But instead of the usual high five, Jane burst into tears. What's wrong?" Marcia asked, and Jane's response made her triumph vanish. Marcia turned pale, apologizing, realizing she'd made a terrible mistake. Jane wasn't angry, but Marcia understood how badly she had misstepped, and she immediately started apologizing, saying she had no idea. Of course, Jane wasn't angry at her at all, but Marcia understood that she had made a terrible mistake. Now that Jane had come clean, Marcia couldn't help but ask, "Is everything all right?" Jane explained that she hadn't seen him in years, and she hesitated a little before continuing to tell her what he had said. She took a deep breath and began. He said, "My mother. He said that my mom has been lying to me. She always said that he never wanted to hear from me and that he was a piece of shit dad. But he just told me that he's been looking for ways to contact me for years, but my mom made it difficult for him. And? Do you believe him?" "I don't know. He seemed genuine, but of course I don't even really know him. I think I have to go home and talk to my mom about this. I need to know the truth." Marcia nodded intensely and said, "Yeah, good idea." Jane gave her a hug and whispered, "Thank you," and then she hurried home. When she arrived, her mom was watching TV in the living room. "Honey, what happened? Are you okay?" she asked as soon as she laid eyes on Jane. It was obvious that she'd been crying. "Mom, I need to talk to you about something. It's important. And I need you to promise to tell me the truth," she said, immediately getting to the point. "Of course, my sweet girl. What is it?" "You know you can talk to me about anything," she said as she hugged her daughter. Jane's mother was an incredibly kind and sweet woman, and people often said she lit up a room when she walked into it. But this whole warm and loving aura disappeared when Jane said, "Mom, Dad said you've been keeping him away from me. Is that true?" Jane asked, her voice trembling slightly. Her mother's face changed, the warmth fading into a guarded expression. She replied, "Your father never showed any real interest in your life, Jane. You know that. He's just trying to manipulate you, dear." Jane felt a knot form in her stomach, the familiar stories from her mother now ringing hollow. Despite Jane's persistent inquiries, her mother maintained a steadfast denial, firmly stating, "He was the one who left us, not the other way around." Their conversation ended in a stalemate, with Jane's mother refusing to budge from her story and Jane left with more questions than answers. The air was thick with tension as Jane stood up, her resolve hardened, determined to uncover the truth behind her father's sudden reappearance and his startling claims. In her old room, Jane started sifting through dusty albums and faded documents, each page a silent witness to her past. As she flipped through the pages, she wondered if these fragments of her history could unravel the truth about her father's claims. Studying the albums closely, Jane noticed discrepancies. and dates that didn't align with her mother's timeline of events. A photograph of her father holding her as a toddler was marked with a date that contradicted her mother's story of him leaving early in Jane's life. In a forgotten box, Jane found old letters and notes, their edges yellowed with age. These letters, filled with words of love and regret, painted a different picture of her father, one that starkly contrasted with the uncaring figure her mother had described. Sitting amidst the scattered memories, Jane pondered her childhood, now seen through a lens of doubt. She struggled to reconcile these new, contradictory pieces of her past with the story she had grown up believing. Resolved to unearth the truth, Jane decided to reach out beyond the confines of her home. She planned to connect with relatives and her parents' old friends, hoping their recollections would shed light on the shadows cast by these newfound doubts. Jane's visit to her aunt brought new insights. Her aunt recalled moments that suggested her father had indeed tried to stay in touch. He wasn't perfect, but he did ask about you, Jane, her aunt said, her words painting a more nuanced picture of her father. When Jane met her parents' old friends, she was confronted with conflicting memories, some matching her mother's stories, others reflecting her father's. A family friend revealed that her parents' separation was more complicated than it seemed. As Jane listened to these differing accounts, piecing together a clear narrative of the past became an overwhelming and challenging task. The weight of these conflicting narratives bore heavily on Jane, stirring a whirlpool of emotions within her. She felt adrift, caught between the shifting tides of her parents' stories, each wave of information pulling her further from the shore of certainty. In the quiet of her room, Jane battled waves of betrayal and anger, feeling deceived by the mother she had trusted implicitly. As she pondered over her childhood, a sense of loss pervaded her thoughts, mourning the relationship she might have had with her father. Jane's once solid world shook on its foundations, making her question the very fabric of her upbringing. Each discovered fact and recounted story chipped away at her long-held beliefs, leaving her to wonder about the real nature of truth in her family. Caught in a vortex of emotion, Jane felt torn, her heart divided between her love for her mother and a growing empathy for her father. This internal tug-of-war left her feeling emotionally exhausted, unsure of where her loyalty should lie. She wondered who, if anyone, in her family had been honest with her, leaving her feeling isolated in her quest for truth. In moments of solitude, Jane turned to her old journals, the pages a repository of memories and feelings. As she read her own words from years past, she sought to find comfort and clarity amidst the emotional chaos that had enveloped her life. In the dusty corners of the attic, Jane stumbled upon a box of old letters and emails, yellowed with age. As she sifted through them, she discovered heartfelt messages exchanged between her parents, hinting at a relationship far more intricate than she had ever imagined. The letters unfolded secrets, revealing intimate conversations and shared dreams, plans that were laid but never materialized. Among the correspondence, an email exchange caught Jane's attention. It showed her parents in a time when love and mutual support were evident. Their words were filled with affection and understanding, a stark contrast to the estranged and distant relationship Jane had always believed they had. Each letter, each email Jane found was like a puzzle piece, slowly challenging and reshaping the narrative she had grown up believing. Immersed in the sea of letters, Jane's perception of her parents' relationship began to shift. The black and white tale of abandonment and disinterest she had been told was now colored with shades of complexity. After much searching, Jane finally located her father, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and determination. Upon contacting him, she sensed his reluctance to speak, his voice laced with a hesitation that hinted at unhealed scars and a fear of reopening old wounds. In their initial conversation, Jane's father expressed a deep-seated fear of dredging up the past, his words heavy with the weight of years of pain and regret. Undeterred, Jane insisted on meeting him, craving closure and understanding. After a moment of silence, her father agreed, his voice tinged with a reluctant acceptance. They set a date to meet, marking the beginning of a journey into their shared yet separate past. In the days leading up to the meeting, Jane wrestled with a whirlwind of emotions, bracing herself for the possible revelations. She pondered the myriad of questions swirling in her mind, each one a key to unlocking the doors of their shared history. The day of the meeting arrived, and Jane sat across from her father, the air between them thick with years of unsaid words. Jane's father began to unravel his side of the story. He detailed his numerous attempts to be part of Jane's life, his efforts marred by unseen barriers and miscommunications. Jane looked at the letters and emails her father had sent, none of which had ever made it to her hands. Her father's voice cracked as he spoke of his profound sense of loss and regret, mourning the years he missed being a part of Jane's life. Listening to her father, Jane began to see him in a new light, understanding the depth of his struggles and the pain he endured. She realized that he was not the uncaring figure she had been led to believe, but rather a victim of circumstances and misunderstandings beyond his control. Caught between the stories of her two parents, Jane felt her loyalties being pulled in opposite directions. She longed to believe her father, yet the love and trust she had for her mother made accepting his version of events an agonizingly complex task. The more Jane delved into her family's past, the more she realized that the truth was not a simple matter of black and white. Her journey was uncovering a spectrum of gray where clear answers were obscured by nuances and unspoken emotions. In moments of quiet reflection, Jane pondered over her upbringing, wondering how much of her perception of the world had been colored by her mother's influence. She questioned the narratives she had grown up with, contemplating their impact on her identity and beliefs. Jane endeavored to find a balance between her newfound understanding of her father and her enduring love for her mother. This quest for equilibrium was a delicate dance, as she tried to hold on to her affection for both parents while navigating the complexities of their intertwined histories. Jane faced her mother once more, this time armed with the pieces of truth she had gathered. "I've spoken to Dad, and I know there's more to the story. I need the whole truth, Mom. All of it." Under the weight of Jane's unwavering gaze, her mother's composure crumbled, revealing the truth in a flood of tears. "I sabotaged your father. He left me after I made a mistake, and in my hurt, I turned everyone against him." Her mother's words poured out, admitting to years of lies and manipulation. She revealed how she twisted situations and narratives to alienate Jane's father, driven by a mix of fury, jealousy, and a desperate need for revenge. With each confession, Jane's mother's voice grew softer, laden with the weight of regret. "I was wrong, and I'm so sorry for the pain I've caused. To both you and your father." Jane listened, her heart heavy with a complex mix of emotions. While she struggled to reconcile with the magnitude of her mother's deception, she began to understand the depth of her pain and regret. Forgiveness seemed a distant shore, but Jane found herself taking the first tentative steps toward it. She contemplated the complexities of her parents' actions, their motivations clouded by human flaws and deep-seated emotions. Jane and her mother's path to reconciliation was laden with the thorns of past hurts and the balm of mutual love. Through tears and heartfelt conversations, they acknowledged the pain caused, their bond strained yet resilient, slowly mending in the face of honesty and understanding. With a heart yearning to mend bridges, Jane reached out to her father, her voice tinged with regret for the lost years. She expressed a desire to start anew, to build the father-daughter relationship they had been denied. Her words an olive branch extended into the gap of time. In the days that followed, Jane and her father embarked on a journey of rediscovery, weaving new memories to fill the gaps of the past. Their conversations, a tapestry of stories, and shared experiences marked the beginning of a bond long overdue. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you never miss another unbelievable tale like this one.